All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, welcoming you back to the Rankin Technical College Summer Academy website design. And we have now created our website, but we've done nothing. So we've done the content, and that's what HTML or hypertext markup language does, is it puts in web page content. But what we want to do now is we want to look at these two files. Normalize min CSS, all right, and CSS main.css. Please, one more time, I'm going to comment this file out in just a moment, but one more time I want to run our website. There it is. There's our home page, our about page, and our contact page. Again, I realize it doesn't look like much right now. First thing I want to do, though, is I want to come back and I want to grab this file, which was added for us, and I want to comment that file out. All right, so I've commented it out. Why did I do that? Well, if we look at our website, and I'm going to reload the page, you may or may not be able to tell, but it changed some things. It added a little bit of margin right here, and it actually changed our font types. Because what that normalize file did, and I want to show it to you, this normalize min.css. Remember, this is the same file, but the one is minified. So we're adding the minified. So ours looks like this. Very hard to read. So I'm going to grab the non-minified version so you can see what it looks like. So this is it. This is setting a bunch of default values for us. All right, it's setting some default font types. It is setting some default margins and padding and a bunch of other stuff. And it's saying, hey, when you first start, I want to give you this stuff. All right, so that added that to it. And I do want that. You typically do want to start. So notice, remember, look at the font type here and here. Look at how small that font is. Look at how small this font is. Now notice when I come back and grab that file, which I had commented out just in our home page here, and I'm going to uncomment it. Save. Go back to here. Now watch when I refresh the page. Watch how all of this changes. Pretty obvious when you take a look in there. So we removed all that padding and margin. We reset our default font, etc. All right. We also have another file that's in there, so I don't need normalize anymore. And that file is called main.css. All right, and it's got a bunch of stuff in it that was provided for us. This is the stuff that the system provided for us, but you know what? I don't like any of that, so I'm just going to get rid of it. And I'm going to just put in all of my own stuff. Now, did that change anything? Well, let's refresh. A little bit. It crunched that up a little bit from the way it looked before. But don't worry, we're going to fix it up ourselves. So far we've come in, we used HTML5 boilerplate, and we added a template file. Okay, that template file, that index.html, we made some changes to it. We made it look the way, it looks like this right now. And then we copied it to an about page, and we changed that so it was just text, and a contact page. We changed that so it was a form. So let's go and take a look at this file that currently has nothing in it but a bunch of comments. I don't need these screen. I'll leave those screen things that are in there. We'll talk about those later. All right. In fact, I believe, let's see, let's double check that if I come back to my home page and I make that smaller, this page is a little bit responsive. If you don't know what that means, you will by the time we finish the class. All right, so let me just start adding some stuff. So I'm going to add my own styles in here. And I'm going to say in my body, which means in the entire document, I'm going to set a few things. I'm going to set the background color, and I'm going to make it, okay. What did that do? It's easiest to make a change and show it to you. See how I made it gray? All right. This is what's called a hexadecimal color code. And it's hexadecimal because it starts with a pound sign. Whereas we work in numbers. If I told you to count, you'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, etc. That's base 10 decimal that we use. But if I work in what's called hexadecimal, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whoops. Eight, 9, then it goes A, B, whoops, B, C, D, E, F, then 1, 0. So this, that corresponds to this to this, 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 and this to this. Well, how do you do that? This means this is not the number 10. This is the hexadecimal value 10, which means I want 0 ones and 1 16. 16 plus 0 equals 16. All right? Well, this value here, this is the amount of red I want put in there, the amount of green I want put in there, and the amount of blue that I want to put in there. All right? So I'm saying I want it to basically be gray. I want the font family that we're going to use, if at all possible, to be what's called an Arial font. And if you can't find that, use what's called a sans serif font. So this, I'm putting in CSS right now. This is saying for the entire document, I want the background color to be this, and I want the type of font that we're using to be this. All right, did I change anything? It's easiest to make a change and then refresh. Now please watch the text in here. It didn't change, so it probably was Arial to begin with, which is fine. All right, then I want the line height to change. And I'm going to put in here 1.3 M. So I want it to basically be about 130% the size it was. Did that change anything? All right. It actually got a little smaller because our default font size was bigger than that. Okay, so it doesn't look like much so far. Doesn't look like much. All right. So that's going to be our site-wide stuff. So that's for, body-wise, so to speak. If you remember, for all of these pages that we created, for all of them, for all of them, I'm going to have to break this up, I can tell already, into two different lectures, which is fine. All right, but for all of these, what we had, now just go back to the index, everything was in a container, in a div called container. Now, when you work with this stuff, you use either IDs or classes. Okay, each page can only have one ID that's called container. If I wanted to use a bunch of containers on the same page, instead of calling it an ID, I'd call it a class. So what I want to say in here is I want to change what's in that container. To show that it's an ID, I put a pound sign there. If it was a class, it would be a period. So a pound container. And I want the width of that container to be equal to 960 pixels. All right? And I want there to be, I'm going to put in margin 0 auto 0 auto. In fact, let's do them one at a time. Let me get rid of this one. Okay, so I said the width is 960 pixels. All right, refresh. Now, it's like, well, what happened here? I'm only using 960 pixels. I made the size of my page smaller. This is my actual viewable page. Okay. Now I'm going to say margin 0 auto 0. What does that do? it centers it on the page. Looking a little bit nicer. Not fantastic, but looking a little bit nicer. All right. Now I want the background color for this to be changed. There's a bunch of built-in background colors that I can use, and one of them is light blue. Okay, and now you can see that. Well, my font color right now is kind of ugly. It's just as black. So I'm going to change that. So the background color, the font color, you just say color, and I'm going to make that another one of these hex codes. So now notice it's kind of a darker blue to go with that lighter blue. So that's looking pretty good. And as I start to crunch this on my page, it is not responsive. All right, doesn't look terrible though. Doesn't look great, but it doesn't look terrible. All right, let's put a border around this. That's 1 pixel in size. And it's solid, and it'll be that same gray color. Okay, kind of hard to tell, but there's a border around it now. All right, finally we're going to put what's called padding. Again, much easier to show you than to tell you. 5px, 10px, 5px, 10px. All right, watch how this appearance changes when I refresh. Okay, it just moved it a little bit. Okay, this is going to look much better as we go on in here. All right, so we all know how a clock works. So if I've got a, in fact, let's do this. That one will be fine. Well, maybe it won't be fine, but it will be fine. All right. If you've got a clock, and you all know this, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Well, when I'm working here with cascading style sheets, this is top, right, bottom, left. All right, so just like we would use with a clock, I'm telling the system my top should have a padding of 5 pixels, my right should have a padding of 10 pixels, my bottom should have a padding of 5 pixels, and my left should have a padding of 10 pixels. So 5 pixels, 10 pixels, 5 pixels, 10 pixels. I could have literally written it like this. Padding, top, 5 pixels. Padding, and the order in which you put these doesn't matter. Right, 10 pixels. Padding, bottom, 5 pixels. Padding, left, 10 pixels. But if I've got my choice of typing one line of code like this or 4, I'm choosing 1. All right, let's put a couple more things in here, and then we'll continue on. So my header. I want my header to have a background color, and I want the background color to be the same color as this, the same color as my text. Again, what does that mean? As always, I'm going to go back, watch how the color changes. Okay, see that? That's my header. Now, you can't read the my first site, but we're going to fix that in just a minute. Okay, so that's what we put into our header so far. Let's put some padding into it. Now you know what that means. 25 pixels to the top, 10 pixels to the right, 5 pixels to the left, to the bottom, and 10 pixels to the left. If I put it in like this on one line, then I have to put it in this order. Top, right, bottom left. All right, did that change anything? Well, yes it did. But I can't read that because it's the same color. So I'm going to have to change that in my CSS next. So my header H1, so I only want to change the H1 that's in my header tag. I want that to have some left padding of 350 pixels. In fact, let's do this out of order, not in the order that I had it. Let's do this. We'll say color white. Now I can say white, and that'll work just fine. And watch now how this changes. Now you can read it. If I didn't want to say color white, I could put in the hexadecimal code, which is pound FFFFFF. So notice that when I do that and refresh, it still is white. Okay? All right. We want to move this, so I'm going to put in, padding left 350 pixels. Again, I'm going to make a change and run it. It's pretty obvious. You can see what happened there. All right, and finally, I'm going to change the font size. And I'm going to put in 2.5 M. You'll notice that sometimes I'm using PX here, and sometimes I'll be using M. What you really should strive for is to never use PX. Always use M's. Why? Because PX, which stands for pixels, those are an absolute unit. They're always that size. EM is what's called a relative unit, so it only is as big as it has to be. All right, so let's save that. And you can see it's a little bigger. This looks like it'll be a good place to stop, and I'll continue on in just a couple moments.